I reported to Westmindlands police that I was being physically threatened, and their response was to threaten me. But what they don't know is I got it on camera. Nick Buckley, MBE, so somebody who's a couple of steps down from being knighted by the king, he's been sending a whole bunch of racist stuff my way on Twitter for the past couple of years. And to be honest, I don't even report half the racist stuff that I get on Twitter, certainly not to the police. But Nick Buckley tweeted that I was the poster boy for remigration and mass deportation. Now what that actually means is somebody coming and physically dragging me out of my home and sending me to a foreign country. And not just me, mass deportation of anybody who has ethnic origins from outside of the UK. There is no way that any policy like that would not result in mass violence across the UK as ethnic minority people defend themselves when people try and kidnap them and take them from the country that they were born in. And like I said, Nick Buckley has been racist to me a number of times. For example, saying that nobody does tribalism like black Africans, which implies that black people are savages, but I didn't report that because I don't report racism in general unless it crosses the line into endangering safety. And given that the narrative of ripping people who were born here out of their homes and sending them to faraway countries simply because of the color of their skin has become more mainstream, I felt I had to draw the line. Especially with recent legislation like the Nationality and Borders Act, which came in after Shamima Begum, specifically designed to make it easier to remove citizenship from British citizens who happen to have ethnicities from outside of the UK. So I drew the line on this because he was supporting a racially violent policy that was increasingly becoming a real possibility. But after reporting Nick Buckley, the Westmindlands police called me and they said they don't police tweets, which has always been a stupid phrase because it implies that tweeting about, say, last week's episode of The Traitors is the same as calling for the mass kidnapping of ethnic minorities. But they went further, implying that my tweets were actually potentially criminal offences. And as soon as they said that, I asked for some clarification. They went away for a couple of minutes to find those tweets, and then I hit record.
Yeah, so here's the one that we've had a review on, which is borderline an offence. We're not saying it is an offence, it's scraping the cusp of it. But the post that you put out stating reform UK politicians should not be wearing our poppies because they would have sided with the Germans in World War II. With that, it goes into a whole array of different things, which is why it makes it borderline an offence.
In that tweet, the video that I'm sharing. Now, unfortunately, I don't have perfect recall of everything I've ever tweeted, and so the video that was actually contained within that tweet was footage of Andy Wigmore, a former colleague of Richard Tice and Nigel Farage, saying that the campaign that he ran alongside Richard Tice and Nigel Farage in 2016 was basically the modern-day version of Nazi propaganda. But the video that I thought was contained within that tweet was one of Darren Grimes, the Reform Party councillor, on Sky News, threatening a Nazi uprising if there was a second referendum on Brexit.
If we turn around to them and say, you're stupid, you've got it wrong, we want you to vote again until we get the right result, they will quite rightly turn around and punch our parliamentarians in the nose and say to them, do you know what, I'm not putting up with this a moment longer, and we will unleash forces in this country that have not been seen since the 30s.
Either way, what I tweeted was legitimate journalistic commentary backed up by actual evidence from Reform Party politicians admitting it themselves. And for me to call out somebody being a Nazi is the same as this person, Nick Buckley, saying that I should be kidnapped and dragged to another country. You believe that those things are equivalent? So much so that my complaint against Nick Buckley should be deemed to be non-criminal because I've done something that's almost as bad as an offence.
So from what we have reviewed, especially with the evidence that we've pulled through, we can't quote that Nick Buckley's actually posted that on Twitter, word for word as you've just stated, which is why the offence hasn't actually been committed.
Okay, but the notion of mass deportation and remigration, is that not sending me out of the country against my will?
But as I've just stated, that's not exactly what he's stating. That's your interpretation. And as I say, with these posts, this is why we don't get involved with political tweets. And we have an obligation not to get involved with politics as it is. But with these posts, this is why I've just suggested that the best form of action would be to put the reports through on Twitter directly.
So I'm reading here. Femi is the poster boy for mass deportation and remigration. That the meaning of that is Femi is the reason why we should start doing mass deportation and remigration, which it almost explicitly says Femi should be part of the mass deportation and remigration. Mass deportation and remigration means pulling me out of my home, kidnapping me. Now, the idea that because I have previously said that Reform Party politicians, because they have threatened a Nazi uprising, and I've called them out for literally threatening a Nazi uprising, that means that I should not be entitled to any police action. And yet the officer that I was speaking to got interrupted by his supervisor, who came in and said this. Because
hello. I'm the officer who's sat with my colleague. I'm basically training my colleague, and I heard what you just said. Listen, we do not get involved in politics. I did overhear I overheard exactly what you just said. We are not here for these purposes, and what you just said is borderline in an offence. It is borderline in an offence. I think you need to end the call now. If you've got an issue with what's being tweeted, you report it to Twitter.
Sorry.
We are not going to take any action on that. No, stop a second. We've listened to you enough. Now, with what you just said, if you utter those words again, we will have a problem, because you were borderline committing malicious communications, harassment, and various other things. We are going to end the call.
I know. I need to ask, what offence? What offence? You've accused me of offence. What offence? What offence? What offence? What offence have I committed? What offence? That is the West Midlands Police threatening me for comparing the Reform Party to Nazis when the Reform Party itself has effectively compared themselves to Nazis. If that's not pro-Reform Party censorship being enforced by the police, I don't know what fucking is. That is political corruption within the West Midlands Police, dead to rights. And to use the phrase, if you utter those words again, you're going to have a problem, he knew he was threatening me. It was explicit. And to do this, to protect a politician who has been threatening me. For example, a couple of years ago, he tweeted that people like Femi need to be very, very careful because they breed resentment, and one day that resentment is going to manifest. This is somebody who has literally been threatening me with racism for years. And the response of the West Midlands Police was to threaten me again. And maybe you think I'm being a snowflake, like, oh, Femi, just get over it, it's just online comments. But I've received threats against my physical safety almost every week for the past 8 years. The ones you're seeing on screen right now are just the ones that I happen to have found by searching online last night. I've been assaulted on multiple occasions by people with ties to the Reform Party. I am used to this. But even if a couple of them got arrested, it wouldn't stop the tide. I reported this one because it's a major figure. Somebody with an MBE on his name. Somebody who was the Manchester mayoral candidate for the Reform Party. I reported it to the police because this mass deportation remigration agenda is literally a threat to national security. Because I'm not even here to argue that the West Midlands Police should have acted on the threat that was made against me by Nick Buckley. But the fact that they chose not to act on a clear threat to my physical safety, but instead to threaten me in order to specifically protect the Reform Party from accusations of racism, shows that the West Midlands Police has a fundamental bias that leans towards the far right.